May we learn together in hope and joy. Please be seated. I learned a new phrase this week, and it's a phrase that describes a thing that I have heard of before, but I had never heard this phrase, and I am mildly afraid that I'm using it incorrectly. So if I am, pretend like I am using it correctly for the length of the sermon, and then after the service, just be like, Tyler, don't use new things. Use the things that you know. But it's called independent invention. Independent invention. Have any of you heard of independent invention before? So maybe that's always a concern when nobody has heard of it before. It's the thing that happens where as cultures develop, things are developed or invented independently in many different places across the globe. So, agriculture, developed in many cultures all across the world, largely unconnected with each other. Thus, it's an invention that is independent. Does that make sense? Make sense? That makes sense? Okay. And what I read, at least, again, I'm going off of things that I'm not certain of, one of the things that develops in cultures across the world is what is called call and response. Do we know what call and response is? Yes, we as Episcopalians do really good at call and response. Alleluia, Christ is risen. Lord is risen. There you are, right? Call and response. And it's all over I know, it's just the excitement of the moment. What can I say? It's all over culture. When I was in kindergarten, when the teacher wanted us to be quiet, she would say, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And all of the children would say, 1, 2, eyes on you. One person across 3 services has known that and said it, and that's because they're a teacher. But we see that. We see that in education. We see it in political speeches all the time. We won't touch on that. We see it in music. We see it in the church, as we've already noticed. And it's been a part of worship, a part of liturgy for millennia. And one of the most ancient examples of that we heard that David read for us so eloquently. As you were listening, you might have, after noticing the length of it, discovered that it gets a little repetitive. Yes? And God said, let there be, fill in the blank, and there is, fill in the blank, and it was evening and morning the first day. Well, what we believe is that this was a liturgy in which one stood up and said, and God said, let there be a, and there is a, and there was evening and morning, and the people would respond the first day. And the leader would read and say, and there was evening and morning the second day, and there was evening and morning the third day. You're not picking up on this. And there was evening and morning, and there was evening and morning. Come on now. And there was evening and morning. And there was evening and morning. Ha! No. God took a nap on the 7th day. See, look, I was just drawing you in order to trick you. That's what the church does. What can I say? And so we see this liturgy. It's formed in this way. And so we know that there's going to be some poetic license in the telling in order to fit the form, in order to teach the lesson. Because liturgy, songs, poems, they are how we teach and learn. If I asked you to recite the alphabet in your mind, I'm guessing that at least a majority of us would hear a song, as we said, A, B, C, D, E. I can't even say the alphabet without thinking of the song. I can't recite the books of the Bible without hearing the song. Genesis 1 is about teaching lessons. Some would argue that all of the theology of the Bible is found here in the first chapter of Genesis. In fact, my boss at the University of Scranton thinks that. You're absolutely right if you're watching. She's not. And so we're not going to cover the whole of Christian theology, but there are a couple of things I'd like to point out that is taught in this story. The first is simply that creation is repeatedly called good. And creation with people in it is called very good. This world of ours is good. That's hard to believe sometimes. That's hard to believe most of the time. We hear Thomas Hobbes say that in the state of nature, life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, and we say, yup, yes it is. It is, I won't say it in Latin, because I can't, a war of all against all. Or if we want to be more poetic, we hear Alfred Lord Tennyson say that nature is red in tooth and claw, and we say, that's right. It's a fight out there. It's a struggle out there. That's what the world is just like. And the Hebrews would hear that and say, no, that isn't true. There are those, many of the Christian faith, who would say that at the very fundamental level, the nature of creation is a separation between human beings and God, a separation between human beings and human beings, a separation between human beings and the world, leading to anxiety and fear and sense of unworthiness and looking down your nose at other people. The Hebrews would hear that and say, that sounds like nonsense. Hear our story. God looked at the world and said it was good. God put us in the garden and said, it is very good. I don't know how people can do this. I don't know how you can walk through this world, perhaps ignoring all of the people in it, and not look at it with admiration. Pick your season of preference. Maybe it's the spring in which the flowers are blooming. Maybe it's the summer in which the sun is shining. Maybe it's autumn when the leaves are turning. Maybe it's winter. Maybe not winter. But you walk through it and you breathe deeply of it. And how do you look at that and not say, this is good? And this, with me in it, is very good. The world is worthy of admiration. And I suspect that if we looked at the world that way, and if we heard in our mind's ear the voice of God saying this is good, we might treat this place of ours just a little bit different. The creation is good. People in it makes it very good because people are special. It's hard to notice this in the way that the reading is printed for us. Nothing against the printing of it, it's the nature of it. But if you notice that there are lines that are separated, and if you were reading them in a Bible, they would be indented after God has created human beings. It says, so God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. It's indented because it is a poem. It is indented because it is a song. It is indented because the Hebrews were so overwhelmed with the majesty of human nature created in the image of God that they said words just won't do. It takes a song to sing of how special you and you and you and you and you and you, even them up there, how special they are. We don't have time in a sermon like this to talk about the Hebrew biblical use of merism, but if you want to talk about male and female, he created them as being two poles of a continuum, not two poles separated from each other. We could talk about that. We could talk about Ecclesiastes chapter 3. For everything there is a season and a time for everything under heaven, a time for war and a time for peace. It doesn't mean that we are either at war or at peace. We're somewhere in between. That's for coffee hour conversation. God created us special. And for generations, we have been wrestling with what in the world does it mean to say that we are created in God's image? Does it mean something special about you? Yes. But it also, importantly, means something special about what each and every one of us ought to be doing together. in an age long before television, long before the printing press, long before easy means of passing along information, the king had to send his image out so that he might be recognized for who he is. Powerful, mighty, a conqueror. So the coins or the statues, the icons, the images were. And so the Hebrews took that notion and they said, our God doesn't need a coin, Bar Kokhba to the side. Our God doesn't need an image. The image of God isn't some statue. If you want to know what God is like, look at God's people. When they are loving, when they are caring for each other. The image of God. And then finally, really just a side note on the whole conversation that I think is important, maybe for myself, but also for you. Remember that this story tells us that rest is not a weakness. It's God's plan for the world. In antiquity, Jewish people were often called lazy sluggards. They were called lazy sluggards because they took a whole day off every single week. And though we in the United States may have taken sort of that anti-Semitic edge off of it, you know what that's like. Heaven forbid you take a day off that you've earned. You earned 3 weeks of vacation, try to use all 3 weeks and see what happens. What does the person at the desk next to you have to say, either when you're there or not? What does your boss say to you about how heavy a burden it was while you're gone, but hey, you're back, so now here's triple the load to make up for the time you earned? I have never, and I'm guessing none of you have ever, been hired for a new job and has your boss say, what I want you to do is take a break. We'll pay you, rest. And once you're ready, come to work. And yet if we pay attention to the days of creation, we notice that humans are created on which day? 6. And the day of rest is which day? So the first day of human existence in this world was a day of rest. God says, rest and get to the work if you can. Capitalism says, do the work that you can and rest if you get to it. So what in the world does all of this have to do with the very special day that we have today, Trinity Sunday? Well, some have argued that the first chapter of Genesis is, now this is just really showing off at this point that I went to seminary, a proto-Trinitarian story. That the Spirit hovered over, in the great King James, the face of the deep. Whatever in the world that means. That's for Father Earl in coffee hour. And then God says, let us create in our image, even though that's just how Hebrew works when speaking of the divine. And they say, there's the Trinity. Are they right about that? I don't know. Probably not. But this is what I would say. God created this world with a reason in mind. God created this world. God created you, each and every one of you, by the way, just the way that you are, so that God could love you. The way that God has loved Father, Son, and Holy Spirit for eternity until now. Why are we in this place? We are in this place to love each other. And so you can look to your right, and you can look to your left, you can look before you, you can look behind you, and you can say, God has created this world, has brought this space into being so that you can love me, and I can love you. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.